And boom, we are back for another episode of AlphaCast. I'm Mike Winter. I'm here as always with Dr. Bear Paul Lando up here on the Smith River on the border of California and Oregon in the great state of Jefferson. Alpha Vedic is an off-grid herbal farm and health co-op. We are basically trying to usher in a new concept of what commerce can be. And with this podcast, we bring in people that we really respect, thinkers that are really pushing the envelope in terms of where we can go as a society, as a culture. And today we have somebody who we're really excited about, Charles Eisenstein. And we're so happy to have him on here, and we're going to have a great conversation. Real quick, a couple points of business. If you're new to the podcast and you're interested to know more about what we're up to, you can go to our website, alphavedic.com. That's ALFAVEDIC.com. There you can join our mailing list to get updates on everything we're doing, future podcast guests, as well as join our co-op, which is really something we're getting more and more serious about as we feel like this is the future of where things need to go. Our Physic Garden Co-op, you can access currently on Patreon. So go check that out. And we have an executive membership where we do monthly meetings. We just finished one a couple of days ago. And it's really an exciting new process for us. So please check that out. Also, if you want to support us, you can support us in a myriad of ways, from joining the Brave browser to joining us on DLive here, which we're currently streaming all our podcasts on. There's all sorts of things. We've got our book list, alphavedic.com/book list, of which we have our guests' books on there today, as well as the past guests and future guests. So there's a myriad of ways you can support us. We do this free. There's no advertising, no marketing. We don't even hawk our products on this podcast. We're just really all about having conversations and exploring ideas. So we appreciate any support that you can give us today. Or thank you so much. So what is going on in the world today? Charles Eisenstein will address this question today. He's one of the most prolific writers and speakers of our time. He's sharing his insights and solutions to meet the challenges presently facing humanity. From an early age, Charles asked questions that societal institutions and world leaders failed to address. As a Yale graduate in mathematics and philosophy, his growing awareness of ecological devastation and social injustice dissuaded him from wholeheartedly embracing a normal career. Charles' early quest found him working in Taiwan as a Chinese translator while immersing into an eclectic investigation of Eastern spiritual traditions, health, nutrition, globalization, spirituality, physics, and biology. His internationally acclaimed books, The More Beautiful World Our Heart Knows Is Possible, Sacred Economics, and The Ascent of Humanity, shares Charles' vision of a better world that awaits us all. We are indeed honored to have you on today, Charles, and just so happy that you can join us today. How's it going?
Oh, it's going great. Thanks so much for having me on. And I've listened to your podcast once or twice and really appreciate it. So I'm honored to be here.
Oh, that's wonderful. How are you today, Bear?
I'm doing great. Charles, it's so kind for you to be with us here today. We greatly appreciate it. I truly believe you are one of the more important voices out there, and I'm glad you didn't go for a normal career because, now you get to share what you're really all about with the world there.
Yeah, that was a very flattering biography. But another interpretation is that I couldn't quite cut it in the normal world, so I had to go alternative.
I would say not that you couldn't cut it, probably that you just didn't fit the mold and had to look elsewhere. And I think that's what happens to a lot of us these days out there. It's like, no way I'm doing that. But hey, I've really been enjoying your, all of your work, but your essays in particular. And I think it's real important in this podcast era that somebody's actually writing out there. When you put something down on paper, there's a level of articulation it's hard to get across otherwise. So, and I do better, I'm more visual. I like to read things. So thank you on that. Your last essay, Conspiracy Myth, was that the name of it?
Yes.
Yeah. I really enjoyed that. I think you made some amazing commentaries in there. And one of the things I really enjoy about your work is you do bring in the concept of the bioterrain, and I've had a whole career in bioterrain medicine, but what I learned is that the bioterrain does extend beyond biology. And when when I was treating bodies, I would have to account for the ecology, not just of the biology, but of the mental and emotional bodies of the clients that I worked with. And you're one of the few people, or maybe the only other person I've ever heard of that, extends the Bautrain to, societal institutions and really, as a way of looking at not just getting distracted by symptoms. And, as a practitioner, I'd say it's, I relate to that because it's very tempting to get really focused on symptoms and lose the forest through the trees. And I think the whole premise, and if I'm putting words in your mouth or misinterpreting your words, please correct me, but this is just what I got out of it. So when you're talking about conspiracy myth, conspiracies. I like a good conspiracy like anybody else. On the other hand, I think there's way too much discussion about who the bad guys are, why they're doing it, and so forth. And we really miss the point, just like in bioterrain medicine, don't get distracted, look at the bigger picture, step back. And, when you use the word myth, you're not discounting that there is truth in a lot of the conspiracy research, but it really, some of those things that we get distracted by or overly focused on are really taking away from the solutions. So I think the article, your essay was great in bringing us back to the fundamentals and, discussing that. So the other thing with mythology is that, I'm at a point in my life where I don't take anything literal. Everything is metaphoric, every little event in my life. So I think also as a society, we need to kind of step back and look at things a little less linear as well. So I just wanted to get things going a little bit there with a bit of my own ramble. And, we really want to, let you have full reign today. Take this wherever you want. And thanks again so much for being here.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Maybe I'll just comment a little bit on the conspiracy myth. Because it's like you said, it's not that. So when I call it a myth, that doesn't mean just a myth. In fact, anyone who says it's just a myth doesn't actually understand the power of myth. If it is actually a myth, it has power and it's a vehicle of truth that is independent of its literal, factual, objective truth. So I'm not saying that name any conspiracy. I'm not saying in that essay, I'm not saying that it is literally true. And I'm not saying that it isn't literally true. I'm saying independent of that, what truth is it communicating to us? And if we can dissociate that from establishing whether it's objectively true, then we can bridge this polarized divide in society. Because the argument about was 9/11 a conspiracy or not, or was COVID-19 deliberately engineered in order to facilitate a totalitarian takeover, or any of these theories out there, if we expend all of our energy and attention trying to establish their factual truth, then we're not ever going to listen to what else it's communicating to us. So in the case of conspiracies, I mean, I've just got so much to say about it. But one of the truths that it is expressing is that there is more to reality than we're being told. What that more is, different conspiracy theories have a different version of that. Another truth that it's telling us is it's expressing the truth that there is a power behind the people who we can see in power that is controlling them, that there's a puppet master back there. Conspiracy theories identify the puppet master as, the Illuminati or the reptilian aliens or whatever, the pedo elite, the Satanists, et cetera, et cetera. They identify it in a certain way. But you could also identify it as like capitalism. That would be a hidden power operating behind the scenes that makes our leaders into puppets. Or it could be, some people would name it as white supremacy or patriarchy. That would be another candidate. All of these are different ways of expressing the same underlying truth. The candidate for the world controlling behind the scenes power that I would propose is what I call the story of separation, a deeper level of mythology that tells us who we fundamentally are and why we are fundamentally here, what a human being is, what a self is, how to live a life, what's important, where we came from, where we're going. That is itself a mythology that is rarely examined, that has generated what we know of today as civilization. So regardless, the conspiracy myth is it's giving some kind of form to this basic and authentic intuition. Another one that I find, actually I've been thinking a lot about recently, another truth that it expresses is that there is a hidden intelligence in the world. Most of the conspiracy theories have this be a negative intelligence that is, nefariously arranging, like nothing is what it seems, nothing is happening by coincidence, and it's attributed to the evil cabal of Illuminati. And when I say that, please don't, like, you might be listening hard for sarcasm in my voice. I'm not actually being dismissive of this idea. I'm saying outside of this idea, what can it be telling us, whether or not you believe that? And so this idea, so this intuition that there is an intelligence coordinating, orchestrating all phenomena, that is what I believe is one of the underlying truths that can take form in conspiracy theories. And there are also, conspiracy theories also give form to psychological states, to fears, to traumas and wounds, such as the state of helplessness, of helpless rage, the feeling of being dominated by an implacable power that's much greater than you, that controls all aspects of life. It's not hard to think of what kind of childhood would co-resonate with that perception. So that's some of what I wrote about in the article. And again, it's not that I could, like, this is the other thing, like, conspiracy theory is a convenient label to apply to anything that dissents from official narratives. In a way, it's true. Like, if you think that the world is much different than the conventional media is telling us, then you're already, in a way, you're positing some kind of conspiracy theory, because if this is true, then why isn't it being reported? There's got to be some kind of, it doesn't have to be a conscious conspiracy, but there has to be at least an unconscious agreement to not look at certain things or to interpret things a certain way. And so in a way, we could actually embrace the term conspiracy theorist, especially if we understand that this coordinating power does not have to be human or does not have to be locatable as a conscious agency, but it can be embedded in the world. Like, God doesn't have to be, some guy up in the heavens moving the pieces around. The pieces themselves can be part of an intelligence and an emergent order, an emergent complexity, an emergent purpose. That's a lot harder for the mind of separation to grok, that there could be design without a designer, intelligence without an intelligencer, sacredness without a separate spirit to bring sacredness into a mundane world. These are some of the basic pillars of modern mythology, which says the world is not sacred. And science and religion agree on that. Science says it's not sacred because it's just a bunch of protons, neutrons, and electrons randomly bouncing around according to mathematical forces, and any meaning that we see is our own projection. Okay, religion says, yeah, you're right, except there's this other thing called spirit that infuses matter with sacredness. And so they're both in agreement, actually. They both don't perceive matter itself to possess intrinsically sacredness, consciousness, intelligence, will, choice, and so on. So this is on a deep level, this is the revolution. This is the transition that that is underway today. It's out of that mythology into a mythology where we no longer understand ourselves that way as separate selves, separate individuals, economic self-interest maximizers, biological reproductive self-interest maximizers, Cartesian bubbles of consciousness inside of a flesh robot, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We don't understand ourselves that way anymore, but we understand ourselves as relational beings, as interdependent, interconnected, interexistent, and holographic mirrors of all things. That's the basic transition that's happening. And you can apply that to things like bioterrain theory, where if the self is not this separate, discrete individual, then your health cannot come from the perfection and the security, the walling off from the world of this separate individual, because that's not all of you. You include your relationships, your biological relationships that you talked about, with the microbiome, and the external biome that through viruses and other particles is constantly feeding genetic information through you and other kinds of information through you, electromagnetic information, chemical information, olfactory information. Like we are these channels, we are these nodes, these nexus points in an inconceivably complex matrix of relationship. So that means when we understand that, our health depends on the health of all. We cannot separate ourselves out, no matter how much we filter our water and eat organic food, imported from somewhere that's not polluted yet, and keep out all of the bad guys with a big wall and advanced security systems, and block out all of the pathogenic viruses with masks and gloves, and aspire to this paradise of perfect control, we'll never reach it. In fact, the more control that after a certain point, even animals alter their environment to create conditions suitable for themselves. They build nests, so I'm not saying that, all control is bad, but past a certain point, it actually generates the opposite of what it seeks. And our civilization has long ago passed that point, which we can see in the, and sorry if I'm talking too long here, but we can see it, I'll finish soon. We can see it in the general decline in well-being that has overtaken the most developed societies over the last generation, where I had Zach Bush on one of my, I do a podcast sporadically as well. And he was saying something like the prevalence of childhood chronic conditions has gone up from a little over 1% in 1980 to like 52% today, which includes, allergies, diabetes, autism spectrum disorders, ADHD, et cetera, et cetera. Did I mention allergies, autoimmune conditions? Like that's the real pandemic today. But we don't see people, out in we don't see the media clamoring, oh my God, we have to do something about this. Life as normal cannot go on. This is intolerable.
Well, that's a conspiracy theory I've been called out on too, which is ironic when I mentioned that. Or I mentioned that it's like 1 in every 2 kids now, I've heard it's over 50%, have some sort of irregular issue with their health, some kind of chronic issue since 1988 or whatever. And then I've literally been called a conspiracy theorist for saying that. It's pretty funny.
So but anytime you point out anything that says something is deeply wrong in our society, then you are logically implicating those that run our society. You're saying they're doing it wrong. And that is actually bordering on a conspiracy theory, because why would they perpetuate something that's wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I think that, that it is, that they are puppets of a zeitgeist, of a paradigm, of a mythology themselves. And like Bear was saying, if we think that, the pharmaceutical executives, or whoever we blame for the problem, if we think that they're the problem, we're not actually embracing terrain theory, which says, well, why is the body politic so susceptible to predators and psychopaths and ruthless, manipulative people? Like, why has this pathogen proliferated in the body politic? To me, that's an important question, because if we don't go there, the only solution is to kill the pathogens somehow. And guess what? If we're talking about the solution of destroying the military, industrial, pharmaceutical, NGO, financial, agricultural, educational complex by force and winning a war against them, there's only two possibilities. The most likely is that we lose, because they're going to be better at all-out war than we are. They're going to be more ruthless. They're more experienced. They have the guns. They have the money. They have the media. They have the, whatever mind control devices. I mean, that's a whole other rabbit hole we could go down. Like, that's scenario number one, is that we abjectly lose. Scenario number two is that we become better at those technologies than they are. And we win, and we become the new dominators.
Or we do totally different technology that's better in a way, a whole different paradigm, which I assume.
Right. And that whole different approach, that's called changing the terrain.
Yep.
And that's where my revolutionary impulse is directed. And then, some people might say, oh, well, Charles, you're just shying away from the necessary fight. Where does your, they'll get a diagnosis of being conflict averse and trying to keep everybody happy. And there's probably some truth in that, but
and not only can that heal the larger bioterrain, when people start to perceive things more as a cohesive whole, but it also gives us as perceived individuals a job to do, because the one thing we can clean up is our own bioterrain. And I'm not limiting this to biology, but then instead of trying to tackle the whole system, then you realize all you have to do is clean up your own backyard. And like people like yourself are doing, give people ways to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that that's, I don't know, I'm not to pick on the way you said it. There's truth in that. It doesn't mean that we don't engage in social and political issues and in, our collective transformation. But it's that we have a much deeper understanding of how change happens in the world that doesn't just depend on how we exercise force and make change happen. We understand that where we have located the problem is maybe even part of the problem. So there might be a moment where we do stand up and fight, or run away, or treat somebody as an irredeemable enemy. But that's not our only way of seeing. And maybe instead of defaulting to that, which we've been taught by Hollywood, that the answer to a problem is to kill the bad guy. So we can, I mean, that's what U.S. foreign policy is based on too. So we can deprogram from that reflexive response and open up to other ways of addressing problems that might not start with conflict.
Yeah, because we are in a conflict-based paradigm right now where everything's a war on
Right.
germs, war on drugs, war on terrorism, and that's the profit model that seems to have worked well for eons. And if we play within that paradigm to fight it, then I'm using the language right there, fight it. As you said, we're in their arena that they are the masters of, versus thinking outside the box, which you do so beautifully in your books, and coming up with solutions that are more in tune with our actual real humanity and our real essence as divine creators. And that goes to these ideas of, the economy of collectivity, or not necessarily, the sacredness of us working together, and the idea is that we can connect spirit to the material in a way that brings a sacred reverence for everything that we do, and versus the ends justify the means, which is currently the way the system is set up, and you're hitting on all those points so beautifully. And it's kind of like, it's tricky because we also have to, as Bear just said, we do need to clean up our terrain before, we're in a very reactionary system right now where we want to go fight the bad guys because we're just seeing all the, everything around us. However, I feel like before we can do that, we got to make sure that we have our act together before we can come together as a community and not be so reactionary, and maybe sit back and think about what's important to our lives and connecting with spirit and all that. And then once we're in tune with that, and we have greater understanding of who we are as, infinite consciousness, or whatever we want to call that, then we can come together. And really, this sounds really hippy dippy, but it's really love that then just conquers all, because what is there to fear? Fear goes out the window. There is no more fear because we have a deeper understanding of why we're here and all that. And the reactionaryism goes away.
Yeah.
So.
And what I was suggesting is that on an individual level, it does come back to each of us understanding that change does come from the inside, and we're the only one that can, and I'm not talking about physical ecology. I'm just talking about, understanding our true potential from within. And in that, simultaneously, we are aware that there's nothing to fight against. It's only, looking within. And then if my experience is when you get down the road with that endeavor a bit, it automatically puts you in touch with the reality that there is this interconnectedness, and that we're all part of the same thing. So yeah, no struggles, no looking at demons outside of yourself, and getting to that inescapable conclusion that we're all in this together.
Yeah, definitely. And the one thing about the myth of with your article is, really that's been since God going back thousands of years. There's always been a myth of a demon or a devil, or that's the role that religion has played massively in, and it really does come to division. And I really feel like right now we're seeing this it all come to a head, this disconnect. It's really now we're facing it as we move into this new age of connection, and it's forcing people to really come to this realization that it's the polarization has gotten so extreme in society that I feel personally it's gonna really force people to really make a decision. And to me, that's exciting. And I feel like we've talked about this in previous podcasts. This is actually, if you look at it the right way, this is a time of great opportunity. And it's really universe saying, wake up, it's time. You're not going to be able to escape this. The escapism is done. Nobody can escape this. So it's forcing everybody to really look in the mirror and figure out what's your priority and how are you going to tackle this. And we have a lot, we still obviously have a lot of escapism and pointing fingers, but I feel like with what we try to do in our community is give people solutions, as you were saying, Charles, to really move forward in this new era of togetherness, of unity, because we all are all connected. And that relates to health, that relates to economics, that relates to how we relate to each other as humans. And so that's something that's beautiful. Like I was just telling you before the show, I listened to on 1.5 speed on Audible, your Sacred Economics book. And it really, you do a great job of really illustrating that on the economic side of this, economy of disconnection, and how it's led to all these systems that we can really point our finger to as being, a conspiracy, but really it's this grander system that has really caused this disconnect. And it's, as we say, it's failing. All these systems are failing right now, and we're seeing that playing out right in front of our eyes. So that being said, fast forward 10 years since you've written that book, and I know you just said that, you're going to update that, but what to you are some of these grander solutions that we're seeing played out that can give our community and people listening to this some hope on that change is happening, and that we are, in fact, coming out of this in a way that really the new era of togetherness and connectivity and spirit meets materialism is really unfolding in front of our eyes right now? I mean, are you witnessing that yourself from your end, or is it really all just still kind of massive disconnect and kind of just chaos?
Well, I like to quote Tom Atlee, who puts out a publication called the Co-Intelligence Journal. He says, things are getting better and better and worse, faster and faster. It does sometimes look like humanity is splitting into two realities even. I just heard someone on a podcast basically saying that, there's those who are choosing to stay in a low vibration and those who are moving to a higher vibration. And I was listening to that, and I added in the back of my mind, and you can tell who is who by those who think that they're in the higher vibration are actually in the lower vibration. Like, anything that invites us into a hierarchy, like a hierarchy of consciousness or spirituality, where some are more evolved than others, that is actually just another expression of the age of separation and the war on evil, and this ascensionism that would have us leave the material world behind in the process of raising our vibrations. So I don't yet, at the same time, there's something true there. Like, I feel like I'm, for decades, I have intellectually and in many practical ways, but especially intellectually, rejected much of normality as our society describes it. But I've kind of lived in both worlds, I'm not homesteading, like we still get our food from, Trader Joe's, most of our food from Trader Joe's most of the year. And it's not like Trader Joe's, I mean, it's, a step up from, whatever Walmart, but it's not like it's a full embodiment of my ideals. It's kind of, I'm partly living in the old world, I'm still ordering stuff from Amazon, I mean, there's numerous ways that I'm not really living in community. We're in a single family box, like so many ways. And it's not like I aspire, it's not an aspiration actually, where I finally get to approve of myself if only I can live up to the words that I believe. That's actually a trap, the trap of serving vanity rather than change. But in these times, I am being faced with a much more stark choice than in the past, where I really have to jump into the new reality. I can't keep a foot in both worlds. It's like having a foot on two icebergs that are drifting apart. And if I don't want to fall in, I've got to jump onto one or onto the other. Like, so this is playing out, okay, maybe we're going to move, there's this community, stuff like that. And maybe, in the past, we could keep our kid in a Montessori school because you could get exemptions from the vaccinations and stuff, and now, like, and you get in this Montessori school, it's really great in some ways, and maybe it's kind of orthodox in other ways, but it still carries the spirit of Maria Montessori, which, if you're going to talk about frequencies and vibrations, hers was very, very high, very beautiful transmission that has come through a century now. But now, it's like, okay, and the school that we're intending to go to is doing their best, but there's a lot of scared parents. It may not be possible to stay even in this alternative aspect of the normal way of life where you send your kid to school. So it is, in so many ways, like in a lot of ways, I jumped ship a long time ago. I haven't, been to an MD since 1991. And I've full bore alternative medicine. And in other ways, like I'm still doing my best to carry out the rituals that our society demands, such as the ritual of filing income taxes, or the ritual of getting a driver's license. Like, these are some of the basic rituals that keep our society going. Our society is actually riddled with rituals, no more and no less than any traditional culture, but we don't recognize most of them as rituals. That'd be a whole other topic we could talk about, which would be interesting in terms of medicine. Anyway, so yeah, but Mike, just I'm just basically agreeing with you here that there does seem to be some kind of resolution of reality into two bubbles.
Yeah, I see that, you just look at your Instagram stories, right? And you're like, whoa, how do people living in such different notions of reality right now? And it's, and there's specific, like you're saying, those who are still in the quote unquote mainstream versus those who are like myself trying to homestead and get more untapped. We tend to, in our own human nature, judge those and judge ourselves for how alternative we are or how unalternative they are. Or then those who are maybe still have cable television and are enjoying specific types of entertainment that we might find to be part of the oppressive nature of the machine. They look upon others as, oh, weird conspiracy theorists or whatnot. And once again, what is that? That is disconnect. That is the driving nail between our ability as conscious creators to come together and really create what I think everybody really wants. I think every natural human being wants to be in a loving space where they feel welcome and they can be, follow their pursuits that makes them happy. And at least I would hope so. This kind of brings up the notion of NPCs. If you're familiar with this at all, Charles, that there could be,
non-player characters.
Yeah, non-player characters, and maybe.
Yeah, man, I was playing Dungeons and Dragons before you were born.
Hey, man, I was an ADD dungeon master. I'm a kid of the '80s, so I'm older than you.
Oh, okay, maybe not quite before you were born, but
Forgotten Realms and Dragonlance. But this idea of that NPCs are all around us, and the idea of being in a matrix of the simulation theory, right? That in really, what is our reality? We create our reality. We talk about this stuff all the time.
I think you're an NPC, though.
Exactly. So I could be an NPC in your reality, and you're literally manifesting my reality here for you. And are we all in our own dream? I mean, we could go down all these rabbit holes.
And
right?
Who are we even? Who's the dreamer? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, we go down these philosophical rabbit holes all the time, and it's fun to do. But once again, as bears want to say to me all the time, you still got to do your laundry, right? And you got to put the trash away, and we live in this materialistic world. And that's what I love so much about your book. And that's something I'm often guilty of, is demeaning the materialism and saying, you know, we got to get back to being more spiritual and all this, but there's a sanctity to creating within this realm and being a craftsman, right? And finding your path as somebody, your vocation. And we know we did a whole podcast on Wallace Wattles' book, The Science of Getting Rich, which I don't know if you've ever read. It's all about, you know, it's the turn of the 20th century. And it talks about this notion of scarcity versus, you know, abundance. And right now we're in a paradigm of scarcity. And you talk about this a lot in your book. You know, the idea that we've now gone down this path of capitalism or, you know, consumerism and efficiency, to where our cities are basically just efficient means to an ends, and we've lost that sacred thing that maybe past civilizations had, where they had beautiful land, you know, beautiful architecture and just craftsmanship wherever you looked. And once again, this relates to these conspiracy theories. Well, there was the Tartarians and we've lost that. And, you know, now we have the evil reptiles that are forcing us into this reality. But either way we look at it, I think what you really stress is this idea of getting back to the sacred and getting back to our vocation as, you know, what is our role here on this planet, whether it be a simulation or not. We are really here to be creators. And I think, once again, this is a time in our executive co-op meeting we just had, there's people that are like, oh, I got to wear a mask at my 9-to-5 job. What am I going to do? And you know, it's easier for me to say this because I've been doing it for a while, but it's leave the job and do what you love. Maybe this is universe pointing you in that direction. Maybe if you don't want to wear a mask at your 9-to-5 job, maybe, you know, you have options. And so anyways, a little bit of a rant there, but I think it's important for us to be looking at this as a means to evolve and to really move into the next phase of our development as a human species. And so, you know, that's what we're doing at Alpha Vedic. We're trying to, with the co-op and everything that we do, we're trying to stress these outlets that people can have and hopefully give some inspiration for those who are really kind of feeling like they're being put literally in a box right now with everything that's going on with COVID and these draconian measures that we're seeing all around us. So anyways, a little bit of a rant there, but yeah.
So yeah, this thing about materiality, it is actually an act of worship to make beauty of the things of the world, whether we're talking materially or socially, the people, the world, the life of the flesh, the life of matter. It is an orientation that serves us equally in any realm, in any bardo state, whether we would call it material or not. Because in fact, materiality is not what we have told ourselves as a society that it is. And, you know, I'm sure everybody listening to that knows that when you go down to the quantum level, you don't have a bunch of little hard balls bouncing around according to Newtonian laws of kinetics. You have information, you have relationship. That's not as recognized. People are, oh, it's all information, it's all energy. What it actually is relationship. What we take to be existence depends on relationship. To locate something in time and space is in quantum mechanics, it's called a measurement. And it fixes something into reality. That only happens with a relationship. So and even without what we think of as an observer, if two quantum particles don't interact, then they remain in a superposition of states with respect to each other. They're not entangled. So this is, on a deep level, the successor to the story of separation and its independent existence. It becomes a relational existence. And I know that's like super philosophical, but that's one of the tributaries that feeds sacred economics. The reuniting of the material and the spiritual, and the understanding of our actions in materiality as a kind of worship and a kind of prayer, in fact, because everything that we do in service to life and in service to beauty is a prayer for life and a prayer for beauty, and will bring more and more of that into the world. And because we are not fundamentally separate from the world, it'll bring more and more of that into our experience. That's another way to put it. This essence of sacred economics is it is the spirit of the gift, understanding that I am here, as are you and everybody, in order to give something to the world that you are uniquely able to give. And maybe it's a similar kind of gift to somebody else. Maybe you're not the only musician, you're not the only artist, you're not the only podcaster, but your particular art or music or podcast is unique, and and you were created with a unique complement of abilities, skills, gifts, and circumstances, like a unique life path that suits you perfectly to give this gift and puts you in exactly where you are needed to give that gift in the best way. This is the orchestrating intelligence that I referred to before in the context of conspiracy myth. And this understanding of self is pretty much the opposite of what the story of separation tells us, which is that we are here to take, we are here to dominate, we are here to maximize our self-interest, reproductive or economic. No, it's the opposite. I mean, you can try that and see how you like it. See if you're actually happy when you have, gotten your financial security and your bunker with 10 years of food and your guns and your gold and your security systems and your dome around your house to keep out the viruses, and like that bunker mentality. That actually is the opposite of wealth. Real wealth is that you feel at home in the world. Real wealth is that you feel totally free to be generous, totally free to give of your gifts, like, because you're receiving so much, you become a wide channel of throughput of giving and receiving both. Mm-hmm. It's the corollary to health. Wealth, that kind of wealth, is the corollary to health, as being in full relationships and being a healthy channel of the flow of life and energy and genetics and information.
And the flow state.
Yeah. Yes. And let me just say one more thing here. There's something else. Gift. I lost it. There was another. I'll probably, as soon as you start talking, I'll probably
it'll come. Barry, you were going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say there are evidence-based models of, what I would consider more true science, which is mirrors exactly what you're saying, in that the universe is not a taking universe. It's a two-way process, and it gives in both directions. And there's a level of physics that would illustrate that. We talk about Walter Russell and his cosmogony quite a bit, and I think he's done the best job of doing that. Another thing I was just going to comment earlier, one of the big traps I think we all get into, and especially a lot of us that are aspiring to maybe be more self-sufficient and all the things we're talking about, we're always trying to get somewhere. And I think the realization has to come someday that maybe we're exactly where we need to be, and it's not a bad place to be. And, when we always are looking down the road, well, when I do get that bunker or have, more silver and gold stashed under my bed, then I will have arrived. But, I'm personally at a place where I don't think was ever any place to get to in the first place. And as usual, any movement, whatever side you think you're on, we fall into the same old trap. So, I'd really like to follow the conversation a little bit, if you want, into the economic model. And, obviously at one time, somebody came up with the bright idea that we need an intermediate kind of means of exchange. And so it's a difficult subject that I try to broach with people, and people have a difficult time getting out of, for instance, I've heard you on some of your podcasts talk about, like, it always reverts to socialism versus capitalism, and you're back into a same struggling dichotomy of things where really, there's nothing such as capitalism, and as I've heard you say, well, what's capital? It depends on what you're talking about. So if you could maybe help me develop some of those ideas, and maybe give us some clues as how we can get out of this means of exchange, so that we are all free to follow our true vocation, find our purpose in life, and not have everything revert back to our pecuniary interest.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'll start by picking on your language a little bit again.
Okay, that's fine.
Just because you started off by saying, at some point somebody came along with the bright idea of a medium of exchange. If only it were somebody's idea and not an organic phenomenon that emerged spontaneously and independently, actually, in various civilizations. It's an inevitable part of a civilization that develops a certain scale and a certain division of labor. Like, there has to be some way to coordinate the activities of human beings toward a common end, and to bridge the meeting of gifts and needs over vast social spaces. You don't need money in a small community where everybody knows who's been contributing, who hasn't, who needs what, who has what gift. You need your flute repaired, and you go to that guy over there, and you need help with childbirth, you go to this person there. Everybody knows. It's only when society reaches a certain scale that a medium of exchange and a way of keeping track of things becomes necessary. Everything, and once you have that, the entire unfolding of civilization, good and bad, is also inevitable. It happened, the same phenomena like patriarchy, slavery, warfare, torture, and the good things, literature, theater, like all of these things happened independently in multiple civilizations: China, India, the Middle East, Egypt, North America, South America, like the same things. Even, and this goes to terrain theory a bit too, but even more than that, to understand society and to understand civilization and even mythology, like our basic stories as organisms themselves that have a lifespan and a life cycle. So even like the stuff that, okay, so on one level, when we have the kind of money system that we have now, which was not invented as an evil plot, but which grew over time, it is inevitable that we will have, it creates roles for ruthless, manipulative, dominating people, and the corporation, which can do that even better than an individual can, by kind of canceling out the empathy of everybody within the corporation. And like all of this is kind of inevitable. Even like the shadow realities of the pedophilia elite and stuff like that. In a way, when you have domination as in the DNA of civilization, which goes back thousands of years, in fact, originally good, the concept of good, which did not exist in Stone Age societies, as far as I know, it was identified with order. Good was us, evil was the barbarian. Good was the sheep, evil was the wolf. Good was the ordered, cultivated land, evil was the wild. And the good king conquered the barbarians, drained the wetlands, cut down the forest, slayed the wild beasts, and brought order to the galaxy. Like Darth Vader thinks that he's good.
Yes.
Okay, so this paradigm of domination, it underlies the topic we talked about earlier, the default into war mentality. It underlies, or it is married to reductionism, because one way to dominate is you reduce things to their base causal elements that you can control. You find something to exert a force on. And so if you understand how force operates in the world, ultimately the totalitarian dream of that would be to map every single particle and every single force. Then you could have perfect control. And we see a mirror of that in the current political zeitgeist.
And in like Agenda 21, they talk literally about that.
Right. And like, whether or not this is actually happening or whether these fears are overblown, like the basic idea of, well, of course, we could make a better world if we have everything under control. And if you are immersed in that mindset and you're one of, in authority, you're like, yeah, we're not going to use this for bad things. We're going to bring more order to society. We're going to protect people. We're going to rationally and efficiently administer this data set. The more data we get, the better able we are to do that. All part of the same paradigm. So to take it back to economics, so domination, right? I was going to go domination. So like the very extreme of domination is the kind of stuff that we hear about with Wayfair and all that, and satanic cults and power and that kind of thing. Like it's almost an organic necessity that it reached that point. And I would also say this is not a permanent state of affairs, but we are entering now an initiatory phase where we can say we're done with that, where we are moving into a new story, or where conditions have made it possible that this inevitable evolution of civilization has reached a crossroads, and we are at a choice point now. It is not inevitable anymore that we continue on the ascent of separation and continue on the road of progress that is identified with control. It had been inevitable. The choice was unconscious, and now we are being offered a conscious choice. Part of that choice is the story of money, the story of capital, as you were saying, like capitalism, socialism. Okay, what is capital? What capitalism is depends on what capital is. And what capital is a story. It is a set of agreements among human beings that say, you own this, he owns that, and this is valuable. And these symbols in a computer mean something. That's what money is. It's symbols. It has no power or reality aside from our agreements about it. And agreements can be changed. Or can they? Well, I would say that sometimes they can, when they reach that metamorphosis moment, which is where we are right now. And I think that, and this maybe we're going both ways at once, but I believe right now that we have a chance, we have a choice point where we could double down on the program of control, or we could let go of that and embrace that we live in a world where goodness need not come from domination, a world where intelligence and purpose and beauty are emergent phenomena that we can participate in and bow into service to, rather than having to impose upon a world that has none of these things. Part of sacred economics is that it's to recognize the natural tendency of the world toward order, toward organization, toward complexity, toward life, and toward beauty. And therefore, how do we become part of that? And when we tap into that emergence, our power becomes much greater than the power that is dependent on how much force we can exert to impose life, beauty, intelligence onto the world. So this is it's kind of a big picture. And in the book, Sacred Economics, I do translate that. Okay, what does that actually mean, in banking? What does it actually mean for taxation or for the design of money, like what money system and economy would embody our dawning realization of our interbeingness, of our compassion, of the sacredness of all things. Like, because money is right now not the friend of those sentiments. It, in fact, is the enemy of them. I mean, so often the most remunerative choice is the worst for the world, for other people, for the environment. So we can make new agreements that are aligned with the choice to step into the consciousness of interbeing.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Go ahead, Bear.
No, I was just going to say that, biological systems seek balance. And the reason why I gravitated towards bioterrain medicine is it got us out of that dichotomy of health and disease. And it was only natural forces seeking balance and, extrapolating that to the larger world. I don't see what's going on in the world now as bad or good. There's just natural forces seeking balance. And it sure looks bad sometimes, but all I see is that, well, there is a lack of balance now, and there's a need for a balancing effect. And until that happens, then, the forces that seem to be in control are really not going to have any counterbalancing, effect, and you'll have all the symptoms that go along with that.
And there's one other thing that happens in nature besides balance, which is like balance is maintained through homeostatic feedback. You have negative feedback that self-limits any process and it maintains homeostasis. But you also have in nature positive feedback loops, which are like the cascade of hormones that leads to childbirth, for example. These are not sustainable, but they take you to a transition point, to a phase shift. And you could look at civilization that way. We have a self-reinforcing positive feedback loop toward more and more consumption, more and more economic growth, and more control. Like control is a self-reinforcing positive feedback loop. The more control you impose on human beings, the more they rebel, the more control you need to impose. Look at the way school has become compared to when I was a kid, and it was open campus in high school. And anybody in the community could come in, and there was a freaking gun club, a shooting club where kids would bring their guns to school and do like target practice after school. Like there was no alarms, like metal detectors, drug sniffing dogs, or any of the things that you find in high schools today, razor wire around the perimeter, surveillance cameras, drug tests, nothing.
Could you say that's because there was a healthier terrain back then, and relating back to the positive feedback, like look at the locusts we're seeing now, right? Because the terrain, due to monoculture and due to everything we're seeing with how modern agriculture has developed, now we have the locust plagues, and they're nature. Yeah. So we're spot on there.
Right. So then there's like a locust outbreak, or a new kind of herbicide resistant weed. And so the solution to this failure of control is to apply even more control, which worsens the conditions and requires even more control and even more and even more. And I've always thought that this is unsustainable, that it reaches a breaking point. Now I'm more of the mind that it reaches a choice point, and where it becomes intolerable, but intolerable to who we want to become or who we really are. So in order to tolerate it, we have to shut down even more of our humanity and our aliveness. But whether it is, because I've just become, this is something that has evolved in my thinking over the last 15 years. I kind of used to think that collapse was going to save us. and that someday things were going to get so bad that we have to change. Now, I think that we are merely offered initiatory moments where we can change, but that climate change or Y2K or economic collapse or none of these things are going to rescue us from ourselves and rescue us from the necessity of making a choice and the power of making a choice.
Yeah. There's an idealization behind collapse that you're seeing. There's a narrative, a story behind that. No one really wants collapse, though. Collapse is frightening. I mean,
or you know what another one is disclosure.
Yeah.
Like this, I said before that stories or mythologies are organisms. They have a lifespan. Part of that is the birth of new archetypes. Archetypes are not static. Archetypes evolve. Sometimes they die. Sometimes new ones are born. And one of the new archetypes of our time that fits into certain mythologies is the archetype of disclosure. This defining event. You guys know what I'm talking about.
Of course.
Where
the alien.
All of this, yeah, it's all revealed. It's all revealed. The deep state, and the suppressed free energy devices and the suppressed cancer cures and all the stuff. The secret files of Wilhelm Reich, that were seized by the FBI. Like all this stuff, all of the behind the scenes machinations of the power elite. It's all revealed. Like this, the horrors and the miraculous things. And so there's this same projection of our hopes onto this archetypal event called disclosure. And I also think that it's in a way that it is kind of disempowering to project that rescue onto something that is going to come from the outside.
Of course.
When we've already had disclosure, right?
Well, we have disclosure every day, really.
Well, starting in 2017, it got into the New York Times, UFOs. And now the Navy freely admits that something totally unexplainable by current science is happening. So did everybody say, rush out of their houses and be like, oh my God, UFOs are real after all. This changes everything. No, it got just submerged in the news cycle. It just disclosure happened and nothing changed. And that says to me that we were not actually ready for it. That there is still a development of consciousness that has not fully reached maturity yet. Because if disclosure happened, most people would shunt it aside. They would just reject those data points because the old story's immune system is still strong enough to reject anomalous data. But that's changing fast, and we can help it change. Like you guys had Dr. E on Edith Ubuntu Chan on your, like the kind of stories that she shared on that. Those are part of the softening of the resistance. Yeah.
Well, it's like what I talk about with the psi research that's going on with Dean Radin and these amazing thinkers who are connecting spirit with science and doing things showing that we have psychic powers, and they're doing hard studies showing this. And that goes back to our connectivity, as we're all connected into what you call source or the divine code or whatever you want to call it. Joe Espinoza or Dr. Dispenza, thank you. Greg Braden, these guys, Bruce Lipton, they've done amazing jobs of kind of bridging those gaps, right, between the mind and the logical reductionist thinking and the more spiritual side. And that's, I feel like, a soft disclosure too. And stuff we talk about every day, every week on this show. It's what we're all about, really. But what I was saying is we get disclosure literally every day, because going back to Walter Russell and what he talks about is like the third column, the third pillar, that really only truth comes from within, and that really disclosure really comes to our own awakening within ourselves. And it's really easy to put this mythos of disclosure out there that whether it be aliens or the deep state or whatever, but I feel like real true disclosure needs to come within, and it's there all around us just by going out in nature, or with Dr. Ubuntu Chan's, her stories of, doing, whether it be the meditation work she's done, or this kind of connection with Mother Gaia, and having these profound experiences, her son talking to her before he was born, these things. And we can experience that ourselves every day if we choose to. We have the choice to do this or not. And I feel like we get trapped in this externalizing this, but really we can do this by exploring ourselves. And this is why I talk about stuff like lucid dreaming, going out of body, and all these kind of things, because really we can empower ourselves to have disclosure every day if we want.
And that kind of work actually attracts that archetypal being called disclosure closer to our reality. It's magnetized to the desire for it and to the readiness for it.
Yeah.
So it's not that it won't come, I mean, I do think that something big is coming that is going to be really hard for people to process and going to generate a lot of cognitive dissonance. And perhaps those of us who have been on the margins of reality for a long time will have an important role to play when that happens.
Yeah. Going back to the economy, the sacred economics, because this book is fascinating and it relates to a lot what I'm doing and with what we're doing and with the teams I'm working with on the crypto side. And, with blockchain and with decentralization coming and all this, and with this idea of the gift economy that you bring forward in it. I mean, we're on DLive right now, and that's literally how this system is built, is we're putting content out and people can choose to gift us and contribute to us a crypto called Lino points, right? So we are seeing that unfolding before our eyes. We are seeing the gifting economy kind of come out through technology. To give us a little update on that book, are you seeing that yourself as well? And, what are some of the updates that you've abridged to that initial writing, which I think you put out in 2010, before the kind of evolution of things like blockchain, Bitcoins, right, eruption onto the scene? We're actually doing a full show next week, Crypto 3.0 for Dummies. And we're going to cover all the basics of crypto right now and the importance of decentralization, not falling into the traps of a lot of, just like anything in this world, there's both sides of the coin, and there's a lot of traps in that world, but also there's a lot of powerful evolution coming out of it. But what in your mind, Charles, are some of the positives, if you will, or if you see any positives with blockchain and crypto and other kind of, technologies that have evolved since you wrote that book?
Okay. And I need to sign off pretty soon.
Okay.
So maybe I'll give a short answer, and then if there's one more thing that you really want to go into.
Sure.
Well, the first thing that crypto does is that it shows us that there is an alternative, and that money is an agreement, and that we could make new kinds of money. I mean, this was to some extent being signaled by local currencies that were popular in the 90s and early 2000s. And crypto brought that concept that we could, have a totally different kind of money system, and that we can create our own money. It brought that to a much larger segment of the population. It is theoretically decentralized, but gold mining is decentralized too, and it can still form the basis of a centralized system if it is used as a reserve currency. I mean, you could have basically a replica of our current financial system built on Bitcoin as a reserve currency. It's actually not a very useful everyday currency because of transaction problems. The quantity and speed of transactions doesn't suit it to be used in the way that we use money right now. But it would make a very usable reserve currency, but then we have potentially the same kinds of problems that led to the Federal Reserve, the booms and the busts and the panics, the runs on banks, stuff like that. So I don't think like the technology in and of itself will necessarily transform society, but it does open up new territory for exploration. And also, like, the thing about crypto, and especially Bitcoin, I know there's others that have pretty fundamentally different designs, but the idea that you can abdicate the political dimensions of money creation to an algorithm is dangerous, because there are still a step behind that. There's still a play of power going on, and a play of agreements that determine, you know, what that algorithm is and who it benefits.
Yep.
So Bitcoin
Totally
benefits. Yeah. So Bitcoin benefits those who have a certain amount of technological savvy and the financial resources to set up server farms. You know, it's not a very conscious choice of how should we distribute new money in society. That should happen. It's messy, but it should happen as a political agreement, as a social agreement that embodies our values, especially our emerging values. That agreement should embody our ecological values and our values toward social equality and the repairing of the damage of past injustice. Like, all of these things could be incorporated into the design of money, and that is inescapably political and messy and human. So like the idea that this could be that such decisions could be automatically, rationally executed by computers that can, you know, in some visions that can optimally distribute resources everywhere, you're in a fantasy. There's still power at play behind those systems. And if it remains hidden, then we'll see who benefits and who gets left out again.
Totally.
So those are some of my thoughts on crypto.
Yeah, one thing that we were developing with a project called Karmaship was a whole new type of consensus that was based on bringing it back to the human, and actually using the blockchain to provide a mechanism for value based on human experience. Yeah. And
that's great.
Yeah,
because you know, like these like self-executing contracts and stuff like that. Like in a normal contract, you can still appeal to some human being to say, "Hey, something's changed. The relationship's changed. Conditions have changed." In our current money system, at least in theory, if there is some like huge shock to the system, the central banks and Federal Reserve can increase or decrease the money supply. You know, it can be organically connected to human beings, and it's dangerous, in my view, to cede that kind of sovereignty over to machines.
No, I firmly agree. And I think we could talk about this for hours. I know you got to get going, Charles. Such a stimulating conversation. Bear, any last, any final stuff that you'd like to ask Charles, or any ideas here? I know you're probably thinking of some things.
Yeah, there's a lot of things, but probably beyond the confines of our time right now. So why don't I think it's maybe a good place to wrap it up. And Charles, once again, thanks so much for being here. We really appreciate your insights and all the work you're doing. And I'd really encourage people that are listening that don't already know of your work, which probably not too many, but, to really check out your website there. And if you can, just maybe tell us the best places to find you and your work.
Yeah, I kind of don't really do social media much, so it's just my website, charleseisenstein.org.
I noticed that. Yeah. I was trying to tag you on Twitter and stuff. Good for you, man, because that's a whole other rabbit hole, the gulags of the social media corporatocracy.
For me, it's not so much of like a principled non-compliance. It's more of laziness. Yeah.
Well, hey, man, it was such a pleasure to have you on. You guys go to his website. I'll put it in the links here of the show notes. And do you have anything else that you're working on right now, Charles, that we can look forward to? Are you just kind of chilling out, or what are you doing?
Right now I'm very much wrapped up in some family things, and yeah, I do have some writing projects brewing in the background, but you didn't even mention I wrote a book on climate, actually, called "Climate: A New Story."
That's
that
right.
I'm still putting some energy into. As you might guess, it's saying something different from either of the two prized positions in the current debate, and advances a living Earth perspective that is not based on carbon reductionism. So I do want to mention that.
And we do have that book and all your books at alphavedic.com/book list. So not only can you support Charles by purchasing the books there, but you can also, we get a little piece of that too as a gift for, spreading the wealth. So you can go to alphavedic.com/book list and find all of Charles' books on there. And thanks again, Charles, for joining us today. It's been such a pleasure to have you on. And we look forward to having hopefully more conversations down the line, because I feel like really we could talk for about 40 hours here. So
yeah, we could apply these to any field. I mean, I could have a whole conversation with Bear about the medical stuff. But yeah, this is great. Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thanks so much, man. And you're looking great, dude. So keep doing whatever you're doing, because you look about 35 years old. So
it's the wholesome outdoor activities here at the farm,
Well, enjoy your time at the farm, and we'll talk to you later, man. Have a great day.
All right.
And everybody on the live stream, thanks so much for joining us today. If you guys enjoyed this talk, you can join us every Thursday at 10 a.m. on DLive, dlive.tv/Alpha Vedic. And it's a free app. Just join in, and you can choose to give us a gift if you want. If not, whatever. We're just here to put this content out and try to really get this information, these ideas out to the world. So thanks, everybody. You can join us on our Telegram too, t.me/Alpha Vedic. It's an amazing community. People just really passionate on there. It's really developed into a wonderful online tribe. So t.me/Alpha Vedic, and alphavedic.com for everything else. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Cheers.